Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is David Mermelstein. You could call me David. Born in Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia before the war was a democratic country very similar to the United States. Grew up in an Orthodox home, a religious home. And I'm looking at you guys in school, how easy you got it. I had to get up at 5:30 in the morning and walk first to the Hebrew school till 7:30. 7:30 I went to the public school till 3 o'clock. 3 o'clock, stopped off home, had a bite, went back to Hebrew school till 7 o'clock at night. And Saturday was the only day we had off, but on a Saturday you didn't do much. You went to the synagogue, and in the afternoon you just visited friends or family. And things were going on good till 1933. The Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazis between 1933 and 1945 was one of the most heinous events in recorded human history. 6 million Jews were murdered, 1.5 million of whom were children. Killed only because they were Jews. Millions of others were killed because of various ways they did not fit the Nazi ideal. 2/3 of the Jewish population of Europe were murdered, an entire once vibrant culture erased from the face of this earth. 1,900 priests in Poland alone were killed, and millions of civilians in Europe. January 30th, 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor. Chancellor in Germany is similar to a premier in Europe, the European countries, and the President of the United States. He ended the German democracy and all the basic rights, such as freedom of speech and assembly and religion. He established a brutal dictatorship. The Nazis believed that the Germans were the pure Aryan race, and the rest, they said, were like inferior. Only like the blonde, blue-eyed type fit that description. And the rest, such as the Jews, Gypsies, communists, and others in colored, were not acceptable and had to be dealt with. And I hope you're going to have a lot of questions, and I have one question to ask you guys now. Who do you think were the first people to be killed in Germany? Yes?
The Jews?
No? I can hear. The Polish? No. Yes? Christian? No. No. Catholics? No. Well, only two more. You're right. Give him an A. It was the handicap. The Nazi party said that they were not worth the food that they take away from us. 70,000 people were killed only because they were handicapped by their own German doctors and by their own German nurses. April 1st, 1933, a boycott of Jewish businesses started, followed by the Nuremberg Laws. Are you familiar with the Nuremberg Laws? It was, number one, that a Jew could not be a professional of any kind. 1938, Kristallnacht, where the Nazis sent all their members out in the streets to break all the windows that were owned by Jews, and 1,000 synagogues were put on fire. And the fire department came out and made sure that the homes next to it wouldn't burn. And the world was quiet. Nobody said nothing. In January of 1942, the killings of the Jews started in a town in the Ukraine called Babi Yar, where they took men and women, told them to line up, undress, and if they had babies, they told them to pick up the babies, so they would be shot with one bullet. 34,000 people were killed in 2 days, and the head of the Gestapo, Heinrich, went to observe the killing, and he said that it's too slow and that it left too much evidence. So he went back to Berlin and called for a conference in a town called Wannsee, near Berlin. And he invited 14 people, and out of the 14, 8 of them had PhDs. So they were all educated. The rest of them were doctors, lawyers, and chemists. And that's where they decided what they called the final solution of the Jewish problem. And they built the 3 death camps in Poland, known as Auschwitz, Majdanek, and Treblinka. We in Europe did not know anything about those death camps. We knew that they persecuted Jews all over the world, and we knew they took them to a ghetto for resettlement, and that's all we knew. And a lot of people in Germany ran away, famous people, and I'm sure you'll know at least one of the 3 that I'll mention. Dr. Albert Einstein, you heard of him? And the other one was Dr. Teller, the one we call here the father of the H-bomb, and Dr. Lieberman. All 3 of them ran away from Germany, came to the United States, and they tried to tell the chief of staff what they were working on. And they couldn't understand what they were talking about, so they said, we'll send you to the State Department. The State Department said, that's too much on our agenda, we'll send you to the President. And the President said, well, we'll have to do something about it. And that's when they started, what was it, where they had the atomic bomb testing? Los Alamos. And that's how that got started. Other famous people that maybe you would know, Dr. Kissinger. He became Secretary of State. He was from Germany. The next Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, she was from Czechoslovakia. And her parents were ambassadors, so they ran away with the government to England, then came to the United States. And in 1939, the war broke out. How many countries do you think Germany occupied in Europe? Go ahead.
Maybe about 100 of them?
No. Not that many. Yes?
14.
Well, you were right on the button. Again? Is it the same boy? How many can you name? Well, should we start counting? Greece, Holland, Belgium, France, Norway, Denmark, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, Albania, Belarus, it's called White Russia, Estonia, Lithuania, Ukraine, and Hungary. How many did we get? That's how many countries they occupied. And they were arresting the people, taking them to ghettos, and then to, excuse me, Majdanek and Treblinka, the two death camps. Anybody that went there for one purpose, only to be killed. They didn't have no chance. Auschwitz was the biggest and deadliest of them all, the biggest, but it was for different purposes. Number one, to kill. Number two, to use especially twins and grown-ups for experiment. And to work outside the camp, they had factories, and to send to other camps. And this was going on from 42 to 44. In 1944, where I lived, the state was called the Carpathian Mountains. And we were occupied by the Hungarians, and they followed the Nuremberg laws. And in April 1944, the town was surrounded, and they gave us 2 hours to pack. Pack as much as you could carry. And they went from house to house and took us to the station and to a ghetto. A ghetto in Europe was not like we know of a ghetto here. Here an ethnic group lives in an area and they would call it a ghetto. In Europe they had wire fences, or in the big cities they built brick walls around where nobody could come in and nobody could go out. And they took us to the ghetto. When they had the whole county, they took us to the station. And I don't know if you saw the pictures of those cattle cars. They filled up the wagon with about 100 people, put in a bucket of water to the right, and an empty bucket for facilities, and the doors were locked. It was dark. There was not enough room for everybody to sit down. So we let the pregnant woman and the old people sit down. And we didn't know how long the train ride would last. So the bucket of water was rationed, a tablespoon at a time. And the rest you could figure out the bucket for facilities when they would have to be used. And the train ride took 2 days and a night. And the train stopped, so they picked up a young man to look out the window and see where we were. And he read off Oświęcim. We knew we were in Poland. In Polish, the city was called Oświęcim. In German, it was called Auschwitz. Then the train proceeded